consider a co-host of the Joe Budden podcast? Because I've always kind of characterized anybody who's on the show, whether it be Patreon or regular pod, as a co-host. But it's almost like...
Once more, Emanny is left out as a co-host with Joe Budden. Yes, there was a recent piece that praised Joe Budden as a new podcaster who has mastered the digital era. He kind of abandoned his rap career to become one of the kings of a new medium called podcasting, and it helped position him as a thought leader and content provider for the podcasting industry. In terms of the dynamics of the show, I found that Emanny's exclusion as a co-host was the most intriguing aspect. For those of you who are unaware, Emanny has been a part of the show for a few years, but each time he is considered a co-host, he is excluded. He was not included in the New York Times report, for instance. Recall that while Flip, Mark Lamont Hill, Ish, and Ice were all present, Emanny was not. The show's introduction came next. Do you recall the time when everyone was featured, but Emanny wasn't? Melissa Ford appeared in both the show's introduction and the New York Times story. However, he is not mentioned in this piece. The most intriguing aspect of this, in my opinion, is that sure, I think Emanny will be offended, and it will be interesting to watch how he pays lip service to it, or how he pays lip service to not caring. Recall that Emanny was the first person on the show to launch a Patreon, which is another intriguing aspect about him. I'm aware that Flip, Mark, and Melissa Ford began their content when they were on the show, but Joe Budden was the first of his buddies to do so. Additionally, I believe it can be related to how he's positioned on the show. He almost seems to be at the bottom of the hierarchy. And you have some Ice, Mona Melissa Ford, despite having preceded Flip Mark Lamont Hill. Furthermore, I can't help but believe that he probably believes he ought to be ahead of Ice, or at least somewhat ahead of Ice. For example, how does Ice receive all of this pub while being excluded from the conference room? I mean, Ice was effectively handed the training wheels and allowed to learn on the job when he first arrived. But now he's being pushed into roles that require him to be the center of attention and play a significant role in the program. Joe Budden is constantly praising Ice, and a large portion of that resulted from Ice constantly being perceived as the person you had to handle with child gloves. Everyone else on the show was dogpiled in the meantime. You had to make fun of them because you couldn't do otherwise. But Ice seemed to be under Viper's protection. Take a step back. Let's go on to the other sections of the article that I found intriguing. As previously stated, it has made Budden a prominent personality in hip-hop media for 10 years. The podcast began in 2016, and I think it will have been 10 years in February of 2026. We're certainly witnessing a significant event, and I'm curious about what they have scheduled for February. They also emphasize how Joe Budden is calm in person, despite being known for his furious outbursts. The piece seems to be saying, hey, Joe's actually he's not like the guy on the show who screams for no reason. They highlight the squad players once more. Parks, Flip, Ice, Mona, and Mark Lamont Hill. Even though Mona just arrived, she is already shining. Emanny was left out, guy. That's not right. They also discuss the $20 million anticipated revenue in 2025 and the 70,000 Patreon subscribers. Once more, because they unintentionally disclosed the Patreon data, Joe is being more open about his earnings. They also discuss how they cover politics, viral moments, and rap culture. Additionally, they assert that the arguments are real. They're not staged, despite what I've always believed. They seem to play into them, in my opinion. A lot of the stress in the program is genuine, even though they could add gas to the fire. Which of the show's plots turns out to be entirely fictitious? Not one. They always emerge as genuine in due course. Thus, it is genuine to life. They then discuss the show's orchestrated chaos and lack of a script. We may now understand, I suppose, why they claim that the program doesn't prepare. Instead, they simply write anything on the board and discuss whatever they want. They don't outline specific talking points. As you can see, there were certain portions of the performance that always seemed a little strange to me. I'm still unsure about how frequently someone is always phoning on the air. When I heard the ringing alert in the last few episodes, I thought, man, this is a podcast, bro. This is what we're doing, even though I realize it's organized chaos. Additionally, they discussed turning down the Spotify renewal, and claim that the arrangement was worth $2 million annually, or $4 million in total, and how 70% of the deal went to Joe. What does that mean then? Rory and Mal received 15% of that, while Joe received 70%. Do the math. Additionally, Joe Budden emphasizes how he was a pioneer of Ustream, mixtape culture, and rap forums. That is 100% true. Joe Budden was chattering away on Boxden, Reddit, Ustream, and other discussion boards. And additionally, I don't believe any other rapper has at least publicly discussed it. So he's correct. He arrived at the digital streets first. And I believe it's just because he's a bit of a neurotic. For example, he enjoys receiving feedback all the time. He enjoys hearing about himself, and the spaces reflect that. Additionally, Joe Budden stated that he values ownership and purchases music rather than relying on streams. In other words, he purchases albums like the 999 record rather than using streams. In fact, I also do it. Additionally, he claims that past maltreatment in the profession is what spurred his independence. Naturally, he's discussing his agreements with Def Jam, Amalgam Digital, and other companies where he feels undervalued. So that's clear. Additionally, the cast performs. In the piece, he stated this: "They have chemistry and have been friends for a long time, which makes the cast work. I believe you can pay them right now because they have been buddies for a long time. So they occasionally compel that chemistry." And additionally, Budden is regarded as a pioneer of modern rap critique. The upcoming podcast that is linked to the story is another aspect of the entire piece. So if you want to check it out, subscribe to the Rolling Stones YouTube page. Felt as though they went to a studio and produced a podcast rather than just writing an article. Returning to my initial statement, Emanny was excluded from this. Funny enough, Ian Schwartzman would join me on Spaces to discuss the piece and the reasons Emanny wasn't included.
Consider a co-host of the Joe Budden podcast, because I've always kind of characterized anybody who's on the show, whether it be Patreon or regular pod, as a co-host. But it's almost like that. What is the characterization?
Okay. In my head, a co-host is a consistent member of the show, whether that's on the public releases or the Patreon releases, and someone that is actually hired to be on the show.
So Emanny hasn't been regarded, like he's in both the Time article and the Rolling Stones, he gets left off as the co-host. I don't know, it's weird.
Yeah, that is weird to me. I wish the publications would start including him, because I consider him a co-host. He works for the Joe Budden Network, and he's a great addition. I don't know. I'm going to have to start taking that up with some of these publications.
I would assume that bothers him.
Yeah, I feel like it probably does too. I mean, it would bother me.
Yeah.
I mean, ego. I have a big ego in general.
That's it. The discussion was fascinating. There are some hypotheses regarding the podcast paying for advertising and how they are now making investments to increase the program's visibility. Ian vehemently disputes it. He claims that he has never once paid for an article, show promotion. And that was evident to me. I simply believe that making a call is more important. Also, I don't believe the Rolling Stones and the New York Times operate in that manner. Since they're legacy media, they most likely receive payment from advertisements rather than from people who highlight them. But you also need to highlight instances in which users pay for such advertisements, such as integrations. Tell me what you think, though. Have you read the article on the Rolling Stones? Do you think this matters to you at all? Are you among those who just say, I'm going to listen to the pod? What Joe Budden has going on outside of it doesn't really matter to me. All of this is only a puff article, and in my opinion, Joe Budden is attempting to communicate with individuals in the industry rather than just his fans. Charlemagne used to do this. Recall that Charlemagne would frequently visit Vulture or other locations to demonstrate his ability to close deals. To make himself appear more like a thought leader in both content development and the content creation industry, Joe Budden is now playing a game that others have played much better than he has.